Welcome back. I am Soulless, joined by DJ Meow Mix on the ones and twos, and Dr. Dunks, my head of security. Our journey of discovery has brought us to southeast England, to the county of Surrey. The references, groundwork, and subsequent roots of our story surprisingly all start here. Cricket's first appearance in history is a reference to the game being played at a school here in the 16th century. Mitcham Cricket Club, formed in 1685, is the oldest documented club in the game's history and was based in Surrey until 1965. Surrey is also home to Epsom Downs Racecourse, the venue for the most prestigious event in British horse racing, the Derby. It is here, in 1778, where we find the first use of the word derby, which came to mean a clash between two teams from the same city or nearby towns. The term also embodies the uniqueness and frenzied competitiveness of the original racing tournaments and the football and rugby tournaments that grew out of this tradition in the 19th century. More modern, and apropos to my life, roller derby carries on the traditions of colorful, friendly, yet extremely competitive tournaments. Also alive and thriving in men's roller derby, Hooligans. Today we will be exploring the history of hooliganism and taking an all too brief peek at some of the most lovable hooligans in sports, the Philadelphia Hooligans men's roller derby team. Hampton Park, May 10th, 1980. 70,000 plus fans are here to witness the 95th Scottish Cup. Less than 24 police officers populate the stadium as peacekeepers. Outside the stadium, over 400 of their brethren occupy the surrounding streets in anticipation of a riotous crowd spilling into the streets after the match. When a game is this boring, sometimes all one has to do is imbibe. Craig is here to watch his favorite football club, the Rangers, defeat their old firm rivals, the Celtic. Though Celtic finished the season ranked higher than the Rangers, hopes of stealing a victory were high, as Celtic were missing some key players from injury. But as they say in sports, that's why they play the game. Craig's vision is beginning to blur from the beer and whiskey, but he can still see the big fat zeros next to both teams' names as regulation time in the match expires. Time to grab another beer. A second chance has arisen to make a difference for his team. He could cheer in support of his Rangers, but that's not what being a hooligan is all about. His sole purpose today is to heckle the ever-living F out of the Celtic. In this furor and alcohol-fueled frenzy, the passage of time is a blur. Craig watches as a strike, appearing to go well wide, is redirected past the Rangers' keeper, and the crowd goes wild. 1-0 OT win for the Celtic. As is tradition, the Celtic are allowed to celebrate and parade their trophy on the pitch after the game. In what the Scottish Football Association would later describe as a, quote, spontaneous, if misguided, expression of joy, unquote, in their investigation of the event, a few Celtic supporters climbed the 10-foot fence surrounding the perimeter of the pitch and joined the players in celebrating. Possibly too intoxicated to head home yet, or just deflated by defeat, Craig is still in his seat sullenly finishing his beer. Staring distantly over the scene, something catches his eye. One of those green jersey-clad bastards is dribbling the ball with a determined gait toward the Rangers' end of the pitch, inhabited by their goal and their rabid fans. The Celtic supporter manages to do something only achieved once so far today, as he kicks a high, arcing strike that hits the back of the goal. Enraged, Craig grabs the first makeshift weapon he sees, an iron bar providing additional support to a wooden terrace. Double-fisting cocktails of violence, a beer bottle in one hand and an iron post in another, he joins the converging crowd of Rangers fans racing headlong at the pitch. Over the fence and into the melee he flies, an uncoordinated helicopter of limbs and blind destruction whirling into the crowd of Celts. The crunch of bones under wood and iron clubs, and and the sounds of crashing bottles and cans smash through the cacophony of celebration, modulating keys into a symphony of destruction. A brick, already the color of crimson, flies through the air. Its flight starts somewhere along the outskirts of the skirmish, reaches its zenith, and begins to descend into the middle of the fray. Slowly rotating end over end, it falls, meeting the back of Craig's skull with a sickening thud. The final results of the day: a head injury and criminal charges for Craig, one of over 200 people arrested, a £20,000 fine for both clubs, and a blanket ban of alcohol at all football grounds in Scotland. The ban still exists today, though there's currently a push to get it lifted as of 2021. Quoting from Wikipedia, "The Old Firm is the collective name for the Scottish football clubs Celtic and Rangers, which are both based in Glasgow. The two clubs are by far the most successful and popular in Scotland, and the rivalry between them has become deeply embedded in Scottish culture. It has reflected and contributed to political, social, and religious division and sectarianism in Scotland. As a result, the fixture has had an enduring appeal around the world." End quote. The Old Firm is a great example of an intense derby rivalry and the hooliganism that erratically orbits one. Many factors contribute to this rivalry, but heritage and its spawn, in most cases, tribalism, are probably the most potent in this instance. Celtic supporters are historically Irish Scots. Rangers supporters were historically native Scots and Ulster Scots. And religion, perpetually sticking its nose where it isn't needed, found a way to complicate issues further. Celtic fans are traditionally Irish Roman Catholic, Rangers Protestant. The Rangers even had an unwritten rule against signing Catholic players to their club. As is probably becoming apparent, a history of hooliganism isn't complete without a history of football, or as it's known colloquially in my country, soccer. The beautiful game has always been connected to violence. A game similar to football was played around 3,000 years ago in Japan. In the 13th century, the sport started gaining popularity in England. It was played on holidays, and matches featured neighboring villages. The ball was a stuffed pig's bladder. The goals, the other team's church. These matches were notoriously violent. Many years and rule changes later, that violence has remained consistent. It was this infamy for brutality that led King Edward III of England to ban the sport in 1635. Also a factor for him, this fun new game was distracting his military from archery practice. So begins a tumultuous relationship between football and authority. King Henry IV and King Henry VIII both passed laws during their reign. Queen Elizabeth had a group of football players jailed with a mandatory follow-up of church penance. This relationship sired an entity that transcended both institutions: hooliganism. The first recorded instance of hooliganism in the modern era of football took place in a match between Preston North End versus Aston Villa in 1885. Whipped up into a furious frenzy by the game, opposing fans rushed the pitch after the game and attacked players from both teams, assaulting them with fists, feet, bottles, and whatever they could find. The Old Firm had notable instances of hooliganism in the Scottish Cup before the 1980 final our spectator Craig had attended. In 1965, 1969, and 77. Any club or rivalry you pick has its set of hooligans there, mostly to make trouble and fight. The list is never ending, but the commonalities make a much shorter one: alcohol, chaotic violence, arrests, and media attention. History behind us, it's time to take a look at some modern hooligans. From the league's website at penjerseyrollerderby.com. When they aren't maintaining "they're just beers" or it's only weird if you make it weird, the Hooligans are taking the track and serving up some serious competition as the all-star men's team of PJRD, which includes the B team, the Shenanigans. Formed in 2006, the Hooligans started off skating primarily flat-track OSDA rules and eventually transitioned their skills to the bank track in 2010. The team became MRDA sanctioned in 2014 and continues to make huge strides at a highly competitive level up and down the eastern seaboard. The Hooligans are known for their famous hangover bouts, where they invite teams to skate both an MRDA flat track game and an RDCL banked track game over the course of a weekend. The Hooligans earned a reputation for their willingness to skate with and or against anyone. Regardless of official ranking, given an opportunity to play, they would assemble a team from their collective to face any team gracious enough to take the track against them. Eventually evolving farther away from the gritty attitude that originally defined them, they fought and clawed their way up the rankings to a now universal hooligan chant. We're from Philly, no one likes us, we don't care. First popularized by Millwall Football Club and sung to the tune of Sailing by Rod Stewart, the song can be heard at any tournament containing hooligans, but is now usually followed by some voices in the crowd yelling, "But we do like you." Diving into the topic, I realized there would be some crossover between roller derby and soccer hooliganism, but I didn't realize how much. From generalities such as colorful and competitive tournaments to rivalries between local teams, all the way back through the etymology of the word derby, roller derby and the Hooligans can follow their history all the way back to Edward Smith Stanley, the 12th Earl of Derby, who organized the first derby in Surrey. It explains away the often questioned cricket bats seen in the original Hooligans logo. And from now on, I will always associate Epsom Downs with roller derby, especially as I contemplate the victories and inadequacies of my last bout while soaking in 5 pounds of salts and hot water. Notably missing here is a history of roller derby itself, or the revival circa the early aughts of women's roller derby. Modern men's roller derby wouldn't exist without the women's pioneers that repopularized the sport. But there are plenty of people far more qualified to tell that tale. I myself am looking forward to a documentary debuting at this year's Oxford Film Festival in March, Queens of Pain, which focuses on 3 athletes from a juggernaut in the derby world, the Gotham Girls Roller Derby League. For any derby discussion or insight into the world, check out my friends over at the Derby Rocks podcast who cover all things roller derby. Big shout out to someone I've literally run into so many times it still hurts. Chris, Pick 69, it's hilarious. Shram.